Welcome to Polite Bites from the Polite Contrarian, where we take a brief look at what's in the news. I am Chris, and I'm joined by Louise. Today, we are dissecting the strange return of 90s political relics and the growing flames in the Middle East. It appears the National Security Advisor is quite worried about Lord Mandelson's recent jaunts to Washington. Whitehall is clearly uncomfortable with this brand of freelance diplomacy.
It is fascinating to see the civil service pushing back against a political ghost. Peter Mandelson seems to treat the United Kingdom's foreign policy like a private consultancy firm. Why are we relying on an unelected peer when we have a sprawling Foreign Office budget? It suggests a lack of confidence.
The issue here is the culture of the political envoy. Our core belief is that the state should be small and efficient. Instead, we see this layer of shadow diplomats and czars. If the Prime Minister needs a bridge to Donald Trump, he should use our formal institutions. Transparency is essential.
Precisely. If we are paying for a national security advisor, we should probably listen to his security concerns. The documents suggest that Mandelson's proximity to sensitive discussions is causing friction. Is this just another example of the bloated Whitehall machine failing to manage its own boundaries effectively?
It certainly looks that way. We need a leaner state that operates with clear lines of accountability. When you have informal players meddling in national security, the risk of a mistake is high. We should be streamlining our diplomatic efforts, not adding more layers of expensive political patronage.
Let us move to the chaos in the Middle East. Donald Trump has signalled a very aggressive stance by telling Israel to finish the job in Iran. This is a massive shift from the current administration's cautious rhetoric. It puts Keir Starmer in a very difficult position on the global stage.
The situation is escalating rapidly after the strike that reportedly injured Mojtaba Khamenei. If the son of the supreme leader was indeed a target, the rules of engagement have changed. This is no longer a shadow war. It is a direct confrontation that could reshape the entire region.
At Prime Minister's questions, Keir Starmer used this tension to attack Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage. He accused them of making U-turns on their support for intervention. It was a raucous session, but it felt like a distraction from the actual strategic risks we are facing right now.
Starmer's focus on domestic political points during a global crisis is revealing. He wants to paint the opposition as inconsistent. However, the real story is the threat to global stability. We should be talking about the impact on our national interests rather than scoring points in the House of Commons.
The most immediate threat to British interests is the Strait of Hormuz. A visual guide released today shows just how easily Iran can throttle global oil and gas supplies. This is where our energy security policy becomes a matter of national survival. We are far too vulnerable.
You are right to highlight that. For years, we have prioritized net zero targets over actual energy resilience. If the Strait of Hormuz is closed, our energy prices will explode overnight. We have neglected our own North Sea resources and ignored the necessity of secure domestic energy production.
It is the ultimate irony of the modern state. We talk about saving the planet while leaving our economy at the mercy of a regime in Tehran. We need to stop chasing ideological energy targets and start protecting our consumers. Energy security must be the absolute priority for any serious government.
The Prime Minister's attack on Nigel Farage was particularly sharp. He tried to link the reform leader to a pro-war stance that has now softened. But Farage is simply reflecting a public that is tired of endless foreign entanglements. The voters want us to focus on our own borders.
The opposition is also being tested. Kemi Badenoch has to balance the traditional hawkish views of the right with a more cautious electorate. It is a difficult tightrope to walk. Do you think the public actually cares about these diplomatic U-turns, or are they more worried about fuel prices?
I suspect it is the latter. People care about the cost of living and the security of their homes. When they see the Strait of Hormuz being threatened, they think about their heating bills. They do not care about who said what in a committee room 3 years ago.
We also need to look at the Iranian response. Their ambassador to Cyprus has been very vocal about their intentions. If they decide to target shipping in the Gulf, the global economy will shudder. Britain needs to be prepared for a supply-side shock that could derail our growth.
This brings us back to our fiscal position. We have no margin for error because we have failed to eliminate the day-to-day deficit. A massive spike in energy costs would force the government to borrow even more. We are essentially building our house on sand.
And while we worry about global oil, we are still failing to build the infrastructure we need at home. If we had more nuclear power and better grid capacity, we would be less terrified of Iranian threats. Our planning system is a massive barrier to our own national security.
The refusal to bypass local objectives for energy projects is a form of national self-harm. We need to build the power stations and the pipelines now. A strong nation is one that can provide for itself. We have become far too reliant on global supply chains and foreign goodwill.
Let us go back to the Mandelson affair for a moment. Does this show that the Labour Party is still struggling with its identity? They claim to be the party of the working class, yet they rely on the ultimate establishment insider. It feels like a return to the past.
It is certainly a retreat into a comfort zone. The government should be looking forward, focusing on high-value growth and radical reform. Instead, they are caught up in internal Whitehall battles over who gets to speak to the Americans. It is a waste of political capital and time.
It is also a waste of money. Every one of these special envoys and advisors comes with a support staff and a travel budget. We should be cutting the bloat in the Cabinet Office and the Foreign Office. The state needs to be a lean machine, not a social club.
The strike on Mojtaba Khamenei is a turning point. If the Iranian regime feels its core lineage is under threat, they will lash out. We should be strengthening our alliances and ensuring our military is ready. But we are too busy arguing about gender-neutral toilets in Whitehall.
That is the dry wit we expect from you. But the underlying point is serious. We are distracted by trivialities while the world burns. Our education system should be preparing the next generation of engineers and strategists. Instead, we are funding unviable degrees that offer no national value.
If we want to be a serious power, we need excellence in our schools and universities. We need technical apprenticeships that actually lead to jobs in the energy and defence sectors. We have neglected the foundations of our national strength for far too long. This crisis is a wake-up call.
Starmer's performance at the dispatch box was confident, but was it substantive? He mocked the opposition for their shifting views on Iran, but his own government has yet to provide a clear strategy for energy independence. Snark is not a substitute for a coherent national security policy.
He is playing to the gallery. It works for the evening news, but it does not fix the underlying problems. We need a government that is willing to take on the NIMBYs and the bureaucrats. We need to build, we need to secure our borders, and we need to grow.
Speaking of borders, the instability in the Middle East usually leads to a surge in migration. If the region destabilizes further, we will see another wave of people crossing the channel. This is a direct failure of sovereignty that we still have not addressed properly.
Every global crisis becomes a domestic border crisis for the United Kingdom. We must be much stricter about who we let in. Migration should be for high-value contributors who help our economy grow. We cannot continue to be the default destination for everyone fleeing a regional conflict.
Do you think the public is starting to see the connection between foreign policy and their daily lives? From the price of petrol to the pressure on local services, it all comes back to how we manage our affairs. The polite contrarian view is that we need more realism and less sentimentality.
That is exactly the point. Realism means acknowledging that the world is a dangerous place. It means prioritising British industry and British workers over vague international ideals. We need to protect our economy from the volatility of the Strait of Hormuz by being self-reliant.
The visual guide to the Strait is a terrifying reminder of our fragility. It shows how a few mines or a couple of fast boats could halt global trade. We need a navy that can protect these lanes, and a state that can survive without them.
Yet we continue to see the erosion of our naval capacity in favour of domestic social spending. We have rebalanced welfare in a way that often fails to incentivise work. We should be tightening sanctions and ensuring that the gap between benefits and wages is wide enough to drive productivity.
If people are working and the economy is growing, we can afford a proper defence budget. But we are trapped in a cycle of low growth and high taxes. The government needs to pivot towards supply-side incentives and tax cuts for investment. That is the only way out.
We are seeing a government that prefers the theatre of PMQs to the hard work of reform. They would rather talk about Kemi Badenoch's old tweets than fix the planning laws. It is a classic case of prioritising the optics over the reality of the situation.
And the reality is that Donald Trump is likely to return to the White House with a very different agenda. If he decides to go all out against Iran, we will be dragged along. We need to decide now what our national interest actually is, before someone else decides for us.
Our interest is energy security, economic growth, and a secure border. Everything else is secondary. We must stop the sprawl of the state and focus on these core duties. Lord Mandelson and his secret memos are a distraction we can no longer afford in this dangerous new era.
It is time to retire the ghosts of the past and face the future with a bit more rigour. We need to be the polite contrarians who ask the difficult questions. Why are we so vulnerable? And why are we not fixing it?
We will leave it there for today. The world is getting smaller and the risks are getting larger. It is time for Britain to grow up and start acting like a sovereign power again. We will see you next time.